Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. Another amazing guest for you, another Olympian. This one's a little bit different because she's just part of an amazing powerhouse team, frankly. She's on the women's U.S. water polo team that we're going to talk about the stats in this interview, but basically have just dominated for a number of Olympics, won the last 3 gold medals. She's been a part of the last 2 Olympics. She started when she was very young. She's still in college now and still has a lot of water polo left in her. So they've won the last 3. She's been in the last 2 Olympics, so that means she is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. I've interviewed a lot of Olympians, telling us a lot of really amazing stories, but I've not interviewed a gold medalist and definitely not a 2-time gold medalist. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be on an Olympic team. Obviously, the U.S. team is a team as a whole, but everyone else that I've interviewed are kind of on an individual sport. I guess with bobsled, you do have one other person, but with water polo, it's truly an entire team that's out on the, I was going to say the field, but I guess it's in the pool. We're going to talk a lot about water polo and exactly what that is. I didn't know the rules, and I still probably don't know a ton, but Maddie is going to teach us about water polo. She's going to teach us about why the women's team is just so dominant. One fact, we're going to talk about a lot of facts, but just to kind of blow your mind like it did me when I was researching, the women's team has lost 1 game in the last 13 years. And that was kind of a preliminary game that didn't necessarily matter all that much. 1 game in the last 13 years. And they keep on bringing home the titles. So it was just amazing to speak with her. She's got so much more to her. She talks about, she's an athlete and a world-class athlete, an MVP of the Olympics athlete, but she's got more to her. She's she's a student. She's going to be attending med school very soon, and we're going to talk about kind of those ambitions too. It was just an amazing conversation. Just learning about, her life growing up in the sport, what water polo is, her experience in the Olympics, her experience winning not 1 but 2 gold medals, her future with the U.S. water polo team, her future in medicine, just a cool conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Here is my interview with Maddie Musselman. I'm here today with Maddie Musselman. Maddie, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. I know we're going to talk about water polo. Obviously, that's why we're here. But before we get to that, just tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the sport.
Yeah. So my name is Maddie Musselman. I was born and raised in Orange County, California, and grew up here, been down here my whole life. But I go to UCLA currently. I'm a student athlete. In my senior year, so kind of experiencing my last year in school and outside of water polo. It's kind of hard to find time because water polo is pretty much my life, but do a lot of baking and cooking and kind of spend time, reaching out to younger generations within water polo. And I'm also kind of on the path for medical school, so doing a lot of medicine interests that I have right now to kind of best prepare myself.
No, that's awesome for sure. And you say that water polo is a big part of your life, and in the research that I've done, it has been for a long time. So tell us what got you started in water polo, and then I guess in an interview that I've seen before, I think it's kind of an interesting. You said crazy story, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started playing water polo when I was 8. I grew up swimming in my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that has actually a swim team, 2 swim teams in just one neighborhood that actually competes against each other. So when I grew up, I started swimming when I was 5, just super competitive within that swim team, which is not very big, but I thought it was like awesome that I got to be a part of it. Trying to break records on the record board. in the neighborhood and kind of like going around and competing with other swim teams. But I got into water polo because my older sister started playing water polo, and both my parents are from the East Coast. My dad played baseball, my mom played soccer. So they weren't very much of water athletes. Definitely did not know much about water polo when they came over to California. And so when my sister started learning about it, I started learning about it, and my parents also started learning about it. So it's kind of like this big learning experience for all of us, which is awesome. Played 10 unders at CDM. So, where I went to high school was where my club team was, and got the opportunity to play with the boys. Also kind of grew up playing on like co-ed teams. And then kind of the girls program took off when I was in like 14 unders. And I don't know if everyone knows what the Olympic development program is for water polo, but that's kind of where the national team pipelines out of. And I'm a pipeline athlete. So I started at the bottom with the development team when I was in 7th grade and kind of worked my way up to the senior team. And I say crazy because it happened kind of quickly for me. I got the opportunity to train and kind of move up the pipeline really quickly. So started in 7th grade. I actually didn't make any teams until like 9th grade, and kept coming back, trying to make it because I knew I wanted to be an Olympian at a really young age, just because I've always been super competitive. And I didn't make it, came back, didn't make it in 8th grade. I came back. And then in 9th grade, I ended up making the youth team, which we got to travel, my first time ever traveling abroad. I got to go to Argentina and my family came, which was obviously super special. And from that tournament on, I got invited to the senior team. So I went from the youth team straight to the senior team as a freshman in high school at 15, and was kind of just there to be part of, the development of as an athlete, and got to play with athletes who'd been on an Olympic team, but also athletes that were in college with a lot of experience that maybe were, training for an Olympic team. So it's definitely a very competitive environment. And so I would go from high school, practice in the morning to school. And then my parents would drive me to LA to train with the national team. And I loved it. And it didn't really become kind of a reality to me that I was, had the possibility of making Rio until like probably senior year of high school. And the coach, Adam Krikorian, was like, we're just really happy that you can be here to really develop as a player. I don't know if Rio is going to happen for you, but we want you here, and, we'll kind of take it step by step. And I kind of looked at it as a challenge, and, kind of went full force. I decided to do my senior year of high school online and commit fully to like an Olympic training year. And so I ended up making my first Olympic team at 18, following that, kind of big step where, I kind of stepped away from being in person in high school with all my friends to, training with all these big wigs with a lot of experience, kind of just hoping that I have a chance, and ended up making the team, and, kind of went off to UCLA right after it and did it again, redshirted my senior year of college to train for another Olympic team, and was very fortunate to make that team as well in Tokyo this past summer. And a lot of crazy things that have happened, obviously, between then, which we can talk about, but looking forward to possibly doing it again. So a lot of things with my Olympic journey, but water polo has been most of my life with everything that I've done since I've been in like 7th grade. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I like to hear kind of the sacrifices paying off for you, for sure. I've done this long enough now that I can tell from, you went from being, a 7-year-old all the way up to current day, and in that short amount of time, you've had to say this once or twice, because that it takes a little practice to be able to, I guess, kind of summarize yourself just like you did. So that's funny.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's got to like shove it in a little bubble.
I like it, but let's break it down a little bit. The first thing I want to ask, I guess you talk about being so competitive, just kind of a funny question. You said that you did it because of your sister. What happened with her? I assume that you kind of blew her out of the water at some point.
So my sister's a goalie. So I have a younger sister and an older sister, and we're all 4 years apart. So I never actually went to high school with my sister, and I never went to college with my sister. So I never got to like fully compete against her, or even with her, because we never were in school at the same place or at the same time. So I really wish I would have like kind of seen what that would have looked like. Because especially since she is a goalie and I'm a field player, like the opportunity to kind of like shoot on her and like try to beat her. But I never really had that experience because she did national team for a little bit. But it just wasn't in her plans for what she wanted to do for her future, which, we all have, different plans and different goals. And so she went off to college and played her 4 years there as a goalie, and then, graduated, and that was it for her water polo career. And so for me, we never overlapped. So the competition's always been there, but never kind of laid out in the pool, where I'm kind of sad that it never happened, but maybe a little bit of a blessing in some way, because she's good.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. I would say that I don't know how well it would go for her. I've kind of looked into your stats in this last Olympics, but we'll just give her the credit that maybe she could stop you. But I never want to assume anything with my listeners. Sometimes, athletes don't necessarily love this question because you're a way higher level than this, but just tell us exactly what water polo is, because there's going to be people listening that has no clue what we're even talking about.
Yeah, water polo is, we're not on horses. A lot of people think that, it's connected to that, but not that sport. Water polo, I always explain it as a mixture of a lot of different sports, kind of like visually. Like when I, first started playing water polo, I was like, oh my gosh, it's exactly like soccer in the water, because, you're shooting on a goal. You're going up and down, kind of like when you're going up and down a field, you're going up and down the pool. Obviously it's very similar to swimming. You have to be in really good shape to kind of have the endurance to go 2-2. So we play in a 25-meter pool with cages on both sides, and you only can use one hand. Everything is kind of based off of that in terms of the rules, and there's a lot of whistles where people can get really confused. But similar to basketball, you can get fouled. There's penalties. You can get kicked out, like in hockey. It's a super physical sport, a lot of drowning and kicking, not punching, but just a lot of wrestling in general. So kind of have to have good hands in terms of being able to kind of defend yourself in the pool. And there's offense and defense, try to score the ball, and you try to stop the ball from going in the cage. So kind of similar to a lot of sports, I always kind of bring it back to, soccer, basketball, and wrestling in the pool.
You've mentioned before that you think it's one of the hardest sports. Why is that the case?
I 100% think it's one of the hardest sports. One, because the game can, we practice for 3 hours a day in the pool without touching the bottom, and everyone's always kind of blown away by that. But, you have to be able to egg beater and have the endurance to stay above water for a really long period of time. And it's kind of a great life skill to have in general, to be really water safe. But when you're kind of combining that with like attacking another person or keeping your body above water also while trying to throw a ball with one hand, there's not many other sports that kind of have that like requirement of, being able to be in a body of water and stay above, while also, kind of having that competition and that goal of, being able to go up and down, kind of actually just breathing in an environment where, you're kind of uncomfortable. It's not easy. And, we've had a lot of athletes that come from different sports that have tried water polo, and they're kind of blown away by the fact of how hard it is. And I think it's just a testament to what the sport is, embodies and is composed of. There's just a lot of hard things that are really small that some people won't even notice until they try it. I think sometimes when you watch it from the outside, you think, oh, I can do that. And then you get in and you can't do it. So just kind of have to try it to really kind of experience how hard it is.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. And some of the things you just mentioned, as far as the one hand, egg beater, all these things, at the very end, I'm going to kind of have like a rapid fact round that you can kind of let me know what some things mean. So if people are listening and saying, hey, what is some of that? We'll talk about that in a bit. But tell me just a little bit about, you've already kind of alluded to it in kind of that big summary in the beginning, but the process in water polo to get into the Olympics. I've talked to other Olympic athletes before, and it's not the same process at all for each sport. So tell me a little bit how it works with water polo.
Yeah. So water polo is it's unique in itself because it has a different kind of time commitment for making an Olympic team. So we can train all year, with our college teams. You can be with your high school team, but in order to create like the team culture that's been Team USA for water polo for a long time is the commitment to spend an entire year together. And so we, whether you're in college or in high school, for example, when I was in high school, we have to commit the entire year leading up to the Olympic Games to water polo. So if I was in college, like especially this past year, I was redshirted. So I wasn't in class. I wasn't doing any school. I wasn't competing with my college team. I was fully a professional athlete with Team USA. And so that's kind of the difference across some other sports is, you're not with any other people besides your team every single day for an entire year. So when I was in high school, I did that. And every summer kind of leading up to all the summers that lead up to an Olympic year are with the national team. And then you can go back to college and then you spend the summer with the national team. But that exact year right before the Olympics. So for example, summer of 2019, we kind of redshirt. And so the year of 2019 to 2020 was an Olympic redshirt for me. And I spent an entire year training. And then COVID hit and I had to do it again. So I redshirted another time and spent the 2021 year completely away from school as well. So I've done 2 years in a row where I've been 100% committed to the national team and no outside interaction with anything else. Maybe on the side, I did some stuff with medicine, but in terms of water polo, it was all national team.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I saw a video of you a few years back that you were a junior, and then I knew you were still in school. So that was one of the questions. What happened there? But yeah, obviously it was you redshirting. That makes some sense.
Yeah.
The question is going to be a little bit more about how the process works to actually become an Olympian. If you're in the training program, is the team composed of everyone who's going to go? Is there a tryout process that only part of the team makes it, or how does that work?
Yeah. So when I was first kind of like getting into the national team, I had the same questions. I was like, what is this? Like, how do I get there? What does it look like? And I think a huge part of it is that Olympic development program. That's where athletes are, picked out of, kind of evaluated through that process, but also, college athletes are definitely looked into, and it's not necessarily a tryout. It's more like every single day that you play water polo, it's a tryout for an Olympic team because you never know who's watching. And something that's super special about water polo is there's always Olympians around, and there's always people that are involved at the highest level that kind of talk to the coach, that will recommend you look at a certain athlete or, maybe invite them to a training to see if, they have what it takes to be at that level. And so for me, I got invited at a really young age. I didn't go in and try out for the senior national team. It was more like I was kind of picked from a big group of people. And it's kind of different for everyone else. And for anyone, it can be something like my experience where you get asked to come. It can also be, from the junior team or from college. Maybe you had a really good college season and you get invited to train. But in terms of, kind of making an Olympic team, this past quad, we had about 20 athletes training with us, and we only have 13 on a roster. So, we train with more than actually get to make it and go to the Olympics. And that's, obviously for reasons of, injury. What if someone gets hurt, having someone ready, but also just the opportunity to train with a lot of people makes it easier to play games and, have enough people to go up and down and have a really good competition. And, you could have probably picked anyone on that team and, we would have been, successful in some way. But at the end of the day, you got to pick the best 13 athletes that can go out there and win. And so I'm really happy I don't have to make that decision. Obviously my coach and the coaching staff make that decision, but it's more of an invitation to that group. And it's a really unique opportunity because you never know when you may be asked to leave, or maybe your time is up, or maybe you make an Olympic team and you personally make the decision to leave. So it's definitely really special to get that invitation. And I always look at it as, if someone's trying to make it there, just pretend that there's always an Olympian or an Olympic coach on the pool deck, and one day you'll be in their shoes and getting the opportunity to play on the senior team. So
you mentioned about there's a lot of Olympians around and kind of competing at the highest level. Every other time I've talked to someone who's been to the Olympics in a sport that isn't, I guess, as mainstream, I always ask, give me some names of people, the Michael Jordans of water polo, so to speak. I believe, kind of looking at this past Olympics and some articles, I think you in the last Olympics and the Olympics prior, you've kind of played with probably one of the best that's played. So tell us just some of those names that are just the high points of water polo.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the opportunity to play with some amazing athletes. One that comes to mind is obviously Maggie Steffens, who played in 2012, 2016, and 2020, and she was MVP in 2012 and 2016. So she's definitely one of those athletes that when I wasn't even on the national team yet, I looked up to for sure. I think of Ashley Johnson, our goalie, who's out of this world, amazing in so many ways, not only in the pool, but out of the pool as well. And just getting the opportunity to play with her and hear her speak about the sport and, her mission with water polo, it's really special. I think about the athletes that came before me. I had the unique opportunity to play and watch Courtney Mathewson, and she was in 2012, and then I got the really awesome opportunity to play with her in 2016. She was a veteran and probably wouldn't have played with her if it wasn't for that experience that I got. So I think she's the GOAT. She's definitely one of the best. And I definitely try to emulate the way that she plays the game. Athletes that I didn't get to play with, but I'll go back and watch video on if they're playing, playbacks from back in the day, is, Brenda Villa, Natalie Benson, Coralie Simmons, a bunch of athletes that are actually coaching water polo now at the college level, and really jealous that they're coaching some younger athletes that I know will be on the national team that maybe I'll get to play with one day. So that's really special. And then I actually have the unique opportunity to be coached by Adam Wright at UCLA. He's a men's coach and also the women's coach at UCLA, and he's a 3-time Olympian. And I've actually gone back and watched him play when he was on the national team, and now he's coaching and has a different coaching style, and kind of see how that's kind of formulated for me and kind of implement that into my game. It's pretty cool. I would say that I don't know if any other sport has the connection to Olympians like the way we do, and the way that college water polo is, and the way that kind of translates over. It's really special. I know when I was young, like I would be so giddy and so excited when an Olympian walked on the pool deck, and I make it a goal of mine to go and show up at ODP as much as I can, because I know how much it would have meant to me when I was younger. And so, trying to give back to the sport, you see it in those who are above us and who've done it before back in the day. And now it's my turn to kind of fill those shoes and do it the best that I can. So definitely a lot of names.
Yeah, and that's cool that you're taking it seriously, and you're realizing, hey, that let's look at it the way that I would have thought when I was younger. So I like that a lot. What's the longevity normally of a water polo player? You're talking about people who played in the 2012 Olympics, so it's not as short as some. That's for sure. So I know it's a pretty intense physical sport. So how long can people normally stay at a high level?
Yeah, I mean, we've not only in our Team USA, but I think even just in other countries as well, athletes make it to 31 to 35 is like probably the older end of water polo athletes. Heather Petrie, she was a 4-time Olympian from 2000 to 2012, and she I think she was in her 30s when she decided to retire. And so she was playing kind of similar to me, started at a really young age, got the opportunity to go to an Olympics in her teenage years, and then kind of fell in love with that process and kind of wanted to do it again and again until she got a gold medal, which they ended up winning the first gold in 2012. So I know a lot of those athletes stuck around to kind of experience that, gold medal experience. So a lot of athletes can make it far. It kind of depends on how your body's holding up, but it just kind of depends on the athlete and if there's other aspirations outside of water polo or if you want to keep going with it. So
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah. So talk about that experience in the Olympics, like just the experience of competing in the Olympics, how it's different than other competitions. Like, for instance, I talked to a bobsledder. He said, the Olympics was cool, but he was competing against, bobsledding is so small that he was competing against the same people he competes against all the time. So it wasn't different with the competition. Don't necessarily feel like that's the same with water polo, given that you compete versus college athletes too. We just kind of talk about your experiences in the sport, in the Olympics, and then also the experience just being there.
Yeah, I think water polo at the national team level is completely different than college water polo for a lot of reasons. I think it's a lot faster. You have to make decisions at a different pace that you would when you're in college, and you play different athletes. I think it's different with water polo overseas. Is it's actually really popular to play in like a European league and to get involved. So not a lot of people will come from Europe to play in college. I'm not saying that there aren't people that do that. There's definitely a good amount of foreigners that play in college, but it's kind of the other way around with water polo. Once you're done with college, a lot of us here in America will go and play overseas. So that's kind of something that's really unique. And so when you get to the Olympics, you're playing athletes that either you've seen in other tournaments, but you don't really see them as much in college. So you kind of have to take advantage of the opportunity to play them when you go and you play in those international tournaments in the summer, and kind of scouting as much as you can. We do a lot of, hosting of different teams so that we make sure that, we're playing them. And when we get to the Olympics, we're fully prepared. And, for me in 2016, I was so young. I thought everything was cool about the Olympics. I, was super fascinated by every team, every player, every athlete that I walked by in the Olympic Village, and just was completely mesmerized by the entire experience. It was awesome. Whether we won a gold medal or not at the end, I probably would have still been on a high and just super excited to be there. And I think that kind of shifted for me in this past experience, because I think I had a little bit more adversity than I did when I was in 2016. Obviously, the 2016 team was super special. I mean, we kind of blew everyone out of the water. I don't think we went one game winning by less than 5 goals. We did an amazing job in Rio. So when I got to that next quad, it was a lot different. We had a lot of new players, a lot of returners, but it was a new team. And so just a lot of new stuff to work with. And, personally, I had surgery in 2018. So I had to overcome an injury, a lot of different mental and physical hurdles that kind of made that experience a lot different when I got to the Olympics. I noticed more of like the mental challenge of being at the biggest stage. I think when you're young, you're kind of a little bit, you don't notice all the challenges that, maybe some older, more experienced players think about. My role was completely different. I felt a lot more pressure for sure to play, kind of perfectly. And it was, definitely stressful in Tokyo to kind of uphold that role of, playing a lot of minutes and, making sure that I was doing my role to the best of my ability. I didn't think of that in 2016. I was just excited to play. And so definitely a lot more rewarding in Tokyo, to be able to come out, go into a tournament kind of really nervous and come out with a gold medal. It just makes it a lot more rewarding. And I most definitely didn't have the perfect tournament. Obviously, I had the honor of being MVP, but if you looked at me in the first half of the tournament, I would not have gifted myself that award. And I think it's just kind of cool to kind of see the ability to kind of transition from, maybe not a great first half of an Olympic Games to being able to kind of step out and just go for it and kind of rub those nerves and pressure off and be able to, win a gold medal with that team and, be the best player in the world. It's definitely gives me chills, and it definitely wasn't easy. So those two experiences are completely different for me. And I'm very thankful that they're very different, because now I get to talk about them in very different ways.
And I think that just obviously as dominant as the women's team has been, I'm sure you have a target on your back in every single game. So that everyone obviously is playing at their best game when it comes to the Olympics, but they're definitely really trying to play at their best when they're facing the U.S. team. So you're the first Olympian that I've had on that's actually won a gold medal. So tell me just a little bit more about, I guess, that extra experience of not just representing your country, but also just bringing it all home.
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of said, our team had a pretty large target on our backs and a lot of pressure in terms of, we won in 2012, we won in 2016, and going for a back-to-back-to-back was kind of the talk of the town in Tokyo for women's water polo. And it was, trying not to get caught up in that and to make sure, we're playing the sport of water polo. Anyone can win on any given day. And kind of reminding that for ourselves. We lost actually in bracket play in Tokyo, and, we lost to Hungary. And it was probably the best thing for our team, honestly, to, kind of get that realization that we're not invincible. Any team can win. And I think it fueled us for the following games, the rest of the tournament. We were a different team, and it was pretty cool to watch. And being able to win a gold medal is definitely, the goal. You think about that when you're young and what it's going to feel like when you win a gold medal, and kind of visualizing that. And then it happens, and it's just a whirlwind of emotion, especially for each individual person has a different journey that, it took them to get there. And, to be on a team where you dedicate, for instance, for Tokyo, we dedicated 2 full years to that process. And so it definitely was emotional, and it was also really hard because we didn't have family there in Tokyo. And so it was our circle and our circle only that really got to celebrate that moment, which in my opinion made it even more special and kind of brought us together in a light where a lot of things were happening in our world. And for us to have that space to really celebrate representing the country and representing all the values that we wanted to as a team, I think kind of showcased that medal and what that meant to us. And definitely a high, and I highly recommend all the younger athletes that are thinking about it to go for it, because by no means did anyone on our team not fail at some point leading up to that journey. We all had different failures leading up to it, but to be able to come out on top at the end was definitely very surreal for sure.
Oh yeah. I'm sure of that. So let's talk about those fast facts. You've said quite a few of them, but you talked about, just having to be the endurance and the stamina. The fact I read is water polo players, they swim over 1.5 miles in a game. So that's some serious stamina for sure. You talked about only being able to use one hand. Is that in the entire game? I was reading something like it's within certain amount of meters from the goal, or how does that work?
No, so we swim up and down. So like I said, the pool is 25 meters, but you at 30 seconds to spend your time on offense, and then the shot clock expires. So it's kind of like basketball where you only have a certain amount of time on each side. So you're swimming back and forth. That's why it ends up adding up to like 1 mile, 1.5 miles, because you're moving pretty quickly. And, you can get steals, you can steal a ball, you can, have a turnover. It's kind of like soccer where like you can kind of be off sides, like little rules like that kind of make the game really fast, where you're kind of moving a lot of distance in a short period of time. And in terms of one hand, only person that can use 2 hands is the goalie. So when they make a block, they have the ability to use 2 hands, but everyone else on the field, whether you're on offense or defense, can only use 1 hand, even when you're blocking the ball as a non-goalie. So like for me, for example, I can only block the ball with 1 hand. It's called shot blocking. And anytime you do have 2 hands on the ball, it's a turnover. So the other team will get the ball if you touch the ball with 2 hands.
Yeah. So next fact being that says women didn't start playing the sport until the 1950s because it was deemed too brutal. It wasn't introduced for women until the year 2000. So just talk a little bit about, I guess, the intensity, the brutalness of it. I noticed you guys wear like something over your ears. Are your ears in danger of getting attacked, or what's up with all that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, a woman can definitely play this sport. And so it kind of makes me, obviously we've seen the movement of female athletes over the years, but for women to try to play back in the day, it's just a testament to the willpower that we have in terms of, especially this sport. It's very physical. We have to wear ear guards because, there's the ability to kind of rip your ear. I've never personally experienced it, but I know that, even just getting hit in the eardrum or hit in the ear, it can be really painful. You can, burst your eardrum or, injuries like that are never comfortable. And so that's just kind of like a safety precaution, is to wear a cap like that. And the sport itself is just very intense. I mean, I made an analogy to wrestling because you're constantly against someone. You're constantly, either whether you're actually physically moving against someone, you're at least mentally kind of competing. It's kind of like a chess game. It's, how can I break this team down or make a move that, they're not going to expect. And I think it's pretty cool to kind of see the women's game actually transform from the first time they played in the 2000 Olympics to the way that we play the game now. It's completely different. And it just keeps getting better, and it keeps getting harder to play because everyone's catching on to the, what one person or one player or what one team is doing. And then you have to come up with a new strategy and a new way to play. And so I love the game, obviously, but it takes a lot of adapting and flexibility to kind of be able to know what to do against each team or each player, and have that mental capability to be like, okay, it's this player now, and people can move all over the place, and to be able to just like play your game while thinking about that, it's not easy.
So are you allowed, how much physical contact are you allowed to make? We talked about how it looks similar to soccer when it comes to goals on each side, but obviously if you look at somebody wrong, you get in trouble in soccer. So I don't know how much you're allowed to touch each other.
Oh no, you're like fully on top of people.
You said drowning. So how long are you allowed to keep people underwater?
Honestly, it's sometimes up to the referee's discretion in terms of like, okay, that's too much, like you're getting kicked out. But anything like above the water. So like if I were to accidentally hit someone in the face, it kind of sometimes looks like it's on purpose. So you can get kicked out for that. Elbows outside of the water, you're kicked out. Anytime you like dunk someone really hard. So if I like go and try to foul someone and it's like too aggressive, I can get kicked out for it. And we have like a center position. So kind of in basketball, when someone's like sitting like right under the hoop and there's two people there, that's kind of usually where all the like wrestling and mean moves kind of happen. And so I do not play that position. So I do not like to be grabbed, but that position is kind of where all the ejections occur, for drowning, for, holding the suit, the woman's suit is very easy to grab, maybe pulling someone's cap off. There's a lot of different things that you can get in trouble for. And so you kind of have to be sneaky if you are trying to do something. But I'm definitely not that type of player. I kind of like to stay away. So,
yeah, and that's what I read about. A lot of crazy things happen below the water. One thing that I read, is this true that they check your nails to make sure you're not going to scratch people? What are we talking? Your fingernails?
Yeah. So, I mean, especially in the women's game, people like to have long nails, and I've had like scars on my chest from people scratching me. But sometimes it's a little inevitable because you have nails on your body, and you never know if you're going to accidentally scratch someone. But sometimes people have really, really long nails, and it really hurts when someone grabs you. So they definitely do nail checks just in case they don't like scratch someone's eye out or scratch someone's face off. I don't know.
That's crazy.
Not everyone's going to like go out there just to hurt someone. That's obviously not the point of the game, but definitely a lot underwater in terms of like grabbing. The men's game grabs a lot underwater, especially because they only wear like a Speedo. So that's the only thing you can really grab onto. For our sport, it's kind of also above water because, we have like kind of goes over our shoulders. But a lot of kicking or like kneeing can happen. I've actually broken my nose from a foot to the face. So definitely things that happen on accident, but also some things happen on purpose. But no one goes out there to do that. If you are trying to do that, then that's not the point of water polo or sportsmanship in any way. So,
yeah. So you mentioned egg beater. Tell us what that is.
Yeah. So it's kind of, if people know what treading water is, usually lifeguards, when they are getting qualified to be a lifeguard, you have to be able to tread water, which is you're pretty much alternating your legs in a circle. And it looks kind of like when you beat eggs in a mixer. I don't know if a lot of people are cooks, but how they kind of alternate circles. That's what we're doing with our legs in the pool. And it's what's keeping us afloat. And at this point in my career, I do it without even thinking about it. And it kind of comes usually probably like 2 years into playing water polo, you can do it without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, you talked about just how, I guess, dominant your team's been. I did kind of write down a little bit of the craziness behind it, where since 2000, the women have never not medaled. You talked about that one loss, but that was the only loss that the teams had in 13 years, and they won the last 3 gold medals. You can talk a little bit about that, or you can take it to the other area and rag on the men because they're not doing quite as well. That's all I'll say to that.
Yeah. I think, I mean, the men's side is insanely talented, so it's hard to, not that the women's side's not, but there's always someone on the men's side that's new and coming up. And so it's kind of been actually really fascinating to watch the men's side. And they've actually done really well, given that maybe they are on the outside and might not look like it, but the men are actually really, really talented. But on the women's side, it's been really special. Woman, having the first time being at the Olympics in 2000 and being able to medal ever since then is just a testament to, the Team USA culture that the women's side has had. And when you ask anyone who's been a part of it, there's a lot of pride that comes with representing USA, and a lot of pride that comes with, bringing a medal back to your country as well. And, you want it to be gold. Like I said, there were a couple of athletes that went from 2000 all the way into 2012 to make sure that they actually got that gold medal. And I think it just shows the competitive culture that is Team USA. And also just like the strive for excellence and the wanting to be the best and wanting to be at the top. And I'm sure there were a bunch of athletes that, maybe won a bronze or a silver that, were their best, and we're really proud of that moment. And there are a lot of athletes that obviously might have wanted more than that. And I think it's pretty cool to be a part of a team and a legacy that continuously wants to be better, and to kind of hear everyone's journey and story towards that. It's pretty special. And all those athletes will come back and speak to, the athletes that are doing it, and to hear, why they did it, why they were part of it. And, from 2012, winning the first gold medal, I got to watch that at home. And I didn't know anyone on the team. I had no connection really, but I knew I was like, I want to be an Olympian. That would be so special. And, 4 years later, it's like, I got to experience it. And, being in 2016, where it was back to back, there were only 4 people on our team that were in 2012. And so we had about 9 people that was the first time they've ever won a gold medal. And so that's special. And, I got to be a part of that experience. And then in 2020, we had 9 people who had already won a gold medal. Actually 8 people that had already won a gold medal. And now, we're trying to share that experience with 5 new people that have never done that before. And, kind of, the responsibility it is for veterans to create that culture and that, strive for a gold medal, and to bring those newcomers along with you and inspire them every day. It's definitely really special to be a part of that. And hoping I can continue that inspiration as I continue on the national team. And I know all those athletes that maybe retire or, are no longer on the team can come back and, share their stories with all the new people that want to be a part of this legacy that Team USA is and women's water polo is.
Yeah, so you're saying if your training continues to go well, nothing crazy happens, that you want to continue, because some people would be like, hey, I want to go out on top. Who knows what's going to happen in this next Olympics? But it's something that you still kind of have that fire for, that you want to try if everything lines up.
Yeah. And I mean, I could easily say like, I'd love to do it again and win another gold medal, but I also want to do it so that the girls who are coming up behind me have that experience as well. And at the end of the day, I know that I ultimately just want to be the best athlete that I can be. And I think I've realized that probably more in the past 2 years than I did, if when I first joined the national team, sometimes we idolize this medal as it's like the only thing that, is going to define us as an athlete. But in all reality, like I know that there's more to it. And I've seen my inspiration as an athlete in younger kids, like coming back and just telling me that they're just so happy that I'm, helping in the sport. And I think that is more powerful than winning a gold medal. And so I know that when I do come back, just sharing my experience and, whether we win a gold medal in 2024 or not, like I'm just going to be happy that I get that experience with those athletes. And obviously I want to win and I want to be the best, but I think my perspective is a little changed. And there's a lot more things that matter more to me now than when I first joined the team. And I think that's kind of cool to be able to reflect on that and kind of, I'm excited to see what it looks like and what the team looks like. We don't even know what the team is yet. So definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool that you're kind of in it for the experience and then helping that next generation. And I heard some gold medalists and some, I don't even remember who it was, but they were talking about, hey, are you going to continue on? Why not stop it on the top? And they were like, well, at this point, it's kind of just for fun and the experience, because no matter if we win next time or not, for the rest of time, we'll be introduced as, Olympic gold medalist. It doesn't matter if I win 1 or 10, it's still, we're still an Olympic gold medalist. So that's something cool. I guess for the rest of your life, that's something that's probably going to precede you.
Yeah. And I definitely won't say that's how I'm going to introduce myself by any means.
You're not going to just introduce yourself to everybody. Hey, I'm Olympic gold medalist.
No, definitely not. Because I don't know. I just don't think that defines me. Of like, yeah, I'm a world-class athlete. I've had the opportunity to compete at the Olympic Games, but I think as everyone has realized, if they have had that Olympic experience, is like we're more than athletes, and there's other things in our lives that matter and that shape us, and that that we get to value and that we get to take with us, whether we play sports forever or whether we go off and we have families or we go off and get jobs. I want to be able to say that, like, yeah, I've been to the Olympics, I've had that experience, but it's not who I am. And it's a part of me for sure. But it's not who I am in that moment. When I go off to medical school, it's definitely not how I'm going to introduce myself. It will be a part of me and my experience that I get to share, hopefully with patients and, how I treat people, but it's not going to be the top of my priority. I definitely am going to make them my priority. And if they want to hear about it, I'll be more than happy to share. But I think it's cool to hear athletes talk about it being just a part of them, not who they are.
No, I hear you there. And kind of in wrapping up, let's talk about that other part of you and what your future holds. You already mentioned that you want to go to med school. Apparently you're not going to wear your medals every day in front of patients. That's disappointing to hear. Not really, but tell us a little bit about that passion as we kind of wrap things up. I don't know whether there's a certain area that you are most interested in, but what do you hope the future holds? I know after the year we've just had, we can't really say what the future is definitely going to hold, but what do you hope it's going to hold?
I mean, I've always loved medicine. I think especially being in sport, actually, I experienced injury. I've, seen the body do really amazing things. And I've just been fascinated by it since I was a very young age. I've had, some family incidences where I've, been exposed to medicine, and I've loved it. I don't know why. I'm just super comfortable in that space. And I also really love kids. And I grew up babysitting in my neighborhood. My neighborhood is full of children, and just was always wanting to help and be involved in, babysitting or in other people's families, and just kind of have a heart for them. And I know that whether that's in pediatrics or I think labor and delivery is really a special moment for a lot of families. And I would love to be a part of that process for sure. And I don't know, I feel like people go into medicine and they say like they're set on one thing, and their medical school experience changes that completely. I love the brain. I love the heart. There's so many things I can see myself diving into, but I definitely think it will be centered around children or kids and their health, because they have a lot of life to live. And I hope that I can help them live healthy lives in whatever way that is. And whether I think my experience with national team really kind of bleeds over into that. And, for me, I, started playing water polo at a young age. I was an athlete, kind of forced to mature at a really young age and kind of like be a professional athlete. And by no means was I perfect. I failed so many times. And I think I have a lot of stories where failure actually was a lot in my brain about, is this what I actually want to do? And I think the way that I had to like work through that adversity is the way that I know I'm going to have to do that in medical school, and kind of overcoming barriers that obviously are very different than sport. But I think they kind of helped me in terms of my mindset going into it. And I think I hope more athletes come into medicine. I've heard that a lot by actually doctors that I've talked to, is, wanting athletes, wanting people that, know how to work in a team. And I hope that medicine can look more towards, working together and a common goal rather than wanting to be the best doctor, and kind of pushing people to the side. I hope I can kind of unite more people together in medicine, and that it's not about being the best in terms of individually, but the best as like a group. And so I'm kind of excited to bring that piece into it as well. So many things. I could talk forever about it and what I'm excited about, but I definitely am interested in working with kids in some way. So
no, I like that a lot. And I've heard that too, that just the athletes would do really well. Obviously they've got to be, smart in the STEM areas, but they do really well in medicine, just because that team approach is desperately needed, and the mentality behind, because a lot of sports are, it's a mental game just as much as it is a physical game. So just the mentality that athletes have is really beneficial for those things. Now, I'll tell you, when I wrote this question, I didn't think that was going to be your answer at all. I'll let people look at kind of your family, but you've got quite a bit of sports and coaching in your family. So I thought that would be something that you would be interested in. Is there any interest in coaching? You talk about some of those those other Olympic athletes that have done that, not as maybe a full-time thing, but you do talk about kids in medicine, and then also the next generation on the national team. So I kind of hear that spirit there behind coaching.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely done some coaching and I've actually really liked it. I've given back to like ODP, that program that I was a part of, and given my time. And it's always fun. Like I do lessons, I'll do private lessons as well, just to kind of, help a kid and kind of spark a love for water polo. It's just always so exciting to see it through their eyes. And I'm definitely interested in it. It's not like as a huge of a passion that I have, like when I think about medicine, but I definitely see myself giving back whenever I can. And I'll do camps, I'll do clinics when the time comes. And water polo is not going to be gone when I'm done playing. I know that I'll be involved in as many ways that I can. I know I'll probably be super busy and probably trying to juggle like 100 things at once, because that's what I do. But I think water polo will always be kind of the topic of conversation. And it's a huge part of who I am in terms of the values that I've learned. And I know that when someone probably introduces themselves to me in doctor's office or asks me about myself, it's probably going to go back to water polo and why I am in medicine. And so I know that it's not going to be gone whether I'm a coach or not, but I definitely do enjoy coaching. I also think that medicine is a little bit of coaching, the way that you speak to people, whether that's colleagues or patients, and just being like a good person while you talk to them. And I think a huge part of that is coaching, whether you look at that look at it like that or not. Every time you speak, you're kind of teaching someone something about you. So I definitely see that in my future for sure.
I like that. And I could see you just, I look forward to, I guess, patience that you have in the future, because I could see you kind of, I don't see you did already say you're not going to introduce yourself, as an Olympian, but just blowing people's mind. But I've taken up a lot of your time already. If you would just tell people how they can, I guess, connect with you, whatever connection points that you have, if people want to follow along on your journey or what have you.
Yeah, I've been actually way more active on social media. I have a Twitter account and a Instagram account. It's just Maddie Musselman, just my full name. And I try to share as much water polo, but also like just a part of my life. Cause like I said, we are a lot more than just athletes. And I think people are always super interested in what we're doing outside of the water and how we're connecting with family and teammates and friends. And I'm also super into like mental health, and it's a space that's really new to me. But it's something that I'm definitely passionate about. And I think it will also be really interesting if people are, wanting to follow me as I go from, water polo in the next 3 years to, to medicine and kind of that transition. So I definitely will be sharing about it. And I've thought about ways to do it. I have some time to think about it, but I think it'll be cool to have new followers and people kind of interested in that journey.
Absolutely. I look forward to seeing where that journey takes you and following along. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
So that was Maddie Musselman. Just a cool conversation, just an inspiring person doing just amazing, amazing things just outside of Olympics, and the things that she's, aspiring to do was, I know that she's bound for really great things, and I really appreciate her time. I can't wait to see her in the pool dominating for years to come in water polo, and then, her dominating the world of medicine too. So really appreciate her time. Go check her out. She mentioned her social media, Maddie Musselman on Instagram, probably the best way to reach her or to follow along on her journey. She mentioned that it's going to be about water polo, but also about, her journey in life too. So urge you to follow her there. Hope you learned a lot, about water polo as a sport, about the U.S. team and how awesome they are, about the Olympics, about what it's like to win gold medals, what it's like to win 2 gold medals and have kind of that, that pressure and that burden because they are so good. It was just a fascinating conversation. I learned so much. Hope you did too. Go check her out. Obviously, as always, check us out outside of this podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Not Enough Podcast, jacksonuff.com. On Apple, give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review. Always appreciate that. If you listen on Spotify, give us that 5 stars. Always appreciate that. When you listen and then you also rate or review, that's just icing on the cake. But regardless, so happy you're here. Hope you come back next week. Take us out, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.